A very good evening to everyone. Now, with the kind permission of the dais, may I kindly bring the valedictory session of this seminar to order. As we gather here today, we are honored to have an array of esteemed guests joining us on the dais. So, please allow me to call upon Dr. Samuel, Assistant Professor from the Department of Sociology, to deliver the address and also to introduce our distinguished guests.
Good afternoon, everyone. I see many of us are still here even on the second day, so that's wonderful. So it is my honor to welcome and introduce the dignitaries that are present onto my left. Professor Lal Nundanga is currently our registrar and a professor from the Department of Forestry. He finished his PhD from Northeast Hill University in 2001, and before he was registrar, he was the HOD of the Department of Forestry in MZU, as well as the director of the UGC HRDC and IQAC of MZU. From an academic to another, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that Sir is not just an administrator. His research interests are non-timber forest products, medicinal plants, pharmacognosy, biodiversity, and biodiversity conservation. The last one being quite apt for our seminar. He has research experience of 21 years, 27 years of teaching experience. He has guided 7 PhD scholars, and he currently has 7 PhD scholars under him. He has had also 28 notable publications to his name. I would also like to take this opportunity to give my present my heartful gratitude as the convener and as on behalf of the Department of Sociology for making the time to be able to make it our seminar. Is beyond our expectation even from the get-go when he did accept our invitation. And I would like to also sincerely apologize for inconveniencing him further because we did change the session timing once. The ICSR sponsorship came 11 days prior to, so that's 12 days from from today. So there were some complications and we had to shift things around and we had to change the timing. And sir graciously did accept the invitation. So sir, thank you so much for not being, let's just say, unhappy with us. Thank you so much. Next, our valedictory address is going to be presented by Professor S.N. Chaudhary. Now, sir did say that he will introduce himself, but I thought I should say a few words nevertheless. Professor Chaudhary is a professor of sociology and former dean at the Faculty of Social Sciences and Rajiv Gandhi Chair Professor at the Barkatullah University, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. He has also been a fellow of the A.N. Sinha Institute of Social Sciences, Patna, Indian Institution of Advanced Study, Shimla, and SMH, Paris. He has also conducted fieldwork among the Native Americans in British Columbia, Canada, which concurrently is my latest research interest. Perhaps we can have a chat about that later, sir. Dr. Chaudhary has also produced 30 PhDs, and he has completed 27 research projects and published 27 books and 57 research articles. Currently, he is a Tagore National Scholar under the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, and he is affiliated to Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya, Bhopal. Professor Chaudhary currently is working on tribal indebtedness, impact of technology on society, suicide among tribal farmers, and tribal development. On that note, we would like to felicitate our respected guests. So may I please call our HOD, Professor Mohanty, to felicitate our guests. Professor Lalundanga, please. Professor Chaudhary. Oh, We have a bouquet as well. Professor Chaudhary. And now, sir, Mohanty sir, please allow me to felicitate you as well. Please take your seats, sirs. I shall now hand over the mic to Angela.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to kindly request Mr. Lelpham Kimakhupsong, guest lecturer from the Department of Sociology, Mizoram University, to present the repertoire's report.
Good afternoon, our respected registrar, Professor Landundanga, and Professor Aisin Chowdhury, and Professor R.K. Mohanty, our respected head of department, and all the participants who have gathered here. And before going into my report, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the reporter team. Julie Moi, can you please stand up? And Arl Tantluangi. Thank you for your works. Okay, thank you. Okay, let me start my report. The two-day national seminar on the indigeneity and sustainable development, locating the local in the context of G20, began with a grand inauguration ceremony. And the seminar started with a beautiful traditional Mizo dance performed by students of MA Sociology. And it was followed by musical performance done by Dr. Samuel L. Zwongo. And the welcome speech of the department, of the head of department, Department of Sociology, Professor R.K. Mohanty, extended a hearty welcome to all the guests and participants. Dr. Bilal Zardiana, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, introduced the guests and facilitation was followed. And the introduction of theme was given by Dr. Samuel L. Zwongo, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology. He introduced his theme to the audience, the importance of indigeneity in sustainable development. In continuation of this, Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Dibakar Chandra Deka, the chief guest, delivered a speech on the need to accept the processes of globalization and modernization in the context of Mizo society, suggesting that social behavior and family bonding should be made intact and must be sustained in the fast-changing world of globalization. The address was followed by a keynote address from Professor Kadelezo Kiki, Professor of Sociology at Tezpur University, on the specific needs of the tribal and constitutional problem relating to Northeast Indian people. He argues that the Constitution of India is not sustainable for the people of Northeast India. Professor Lalne Izovi, Honorable Dean School of Social Sciences, delivered the presidential address on the importance of maintaining sustainable development for Northeast India, and she emphasized how our resources were sinking and the population keeps on increasing. The inaugural session concluded with a vote of thanks from Mr. Lershtroy Liana, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, Mizoram University. He encouraged all the speakers and participants to further participate in future seminars. The seminar is attended by 102 delegates and experts, and the conference had 3 panel discussions on the first day, where 9 papers were presented, and the first session had 3 presentations, which was chaired by Professor Srinivas Pathi, Department of Public Administration, MZU. The first presenter was Dr. N. William Singh on Crushing the Eagle's Nest, Ongoing Livelihood and Dependence Issues in Mizoram, where he highlighted the ground reality of the official figures and claims of the development in Mizoram. He concluded that the livelihood issues are becoming problematic, income and earnings becoming more and more woeful. He also talks about the electioneering in Mizoram and distribution of freebies. The second presenter was Dr. Lalmangayi on indigenous knowledge systems and practices in India towards futuristic sustainable development. Her paper is based on her PhD research. She talked about tribes in India have their own traditional medicines and tribal knowledge is passed on from generation to generation. But tribals are losing the knowledge due to the younger generations not giving them much significance. She concluded instead of reducing the traditional techniques as supernatural, it is necessary to acknowledge and recognize this tribal knowledge which they have attained from their interaction with the environment. In this way, the tribal knowledge can take a lead towards sustainable development. The last presentation in the first session was Reawakening Indigenous Spirituality in the Context of Mizoram by Dr. Rodi Mar. She contextualizing indigenous spirituality through a brief reading of the cultural and spiritual history of Mizoram. She concluded that the circle of life experienced by the forefathers needs to be reawakened for the peaceful and sustainable existence of the present-day Mizos. The session had question and answer round and concluded the session by the chair, Professor Srinivas Pathi. The second session was started after lunch, where three presenters presented their papers under the session chair of Professor Ngurliana Silo, Department of History and Ethnography, MZU. The first presenter was Dr. Ldin Pui on sustainability of language and lyrics, a study of selected Mizo songs. Her discussions highlighted the change that Mizo language went through it came into contact with outsider, particularly the British missionary, which led to the rejection of the traditional use of words. This led to the departure of traditional language from the people. The second presenter was Dr. Jemima Marak on taking cognizance of the value-loaded traditions and cultural practices for sustainable development. The discussion was delved into the meaning of culture, social values, and sustainable development, and interaction among different cultures cannot be avoided as it is accompanied by globalization. She went on to show her appreciation for the concept of Malo Dor in Mizoram, the shop without the shopkeeper, and as it offers hope for humanity and symbolizes faith, trust, and integrity in the world. The last presenter was Lalhun Kima on reviving visual culture of Mizo rock arts on canvases. He discussions focuses on the traditional mode of visual expression on megaliths among the Mizo. He presented the evolution of visual arts form in Mizo society, Lungpun Ropui and Kotswa Ropui, and the traditional Mizo society greeting stones were done by the Mizos as early as Rune and Trio era. Questions and answer round was open and the session was concluded by the chair. The third session was chaired by Professor V. Ratnamala, Department of Mass Communication, MZU, and the third session also had three presenters. The first presenter is Lemuan Sangao on a sociological study of male deaths in Mizoram. He pointed out that the main reason behind the rising death of males in Mizoram is alcohol and drug abuse. He further emphasized on the attributions of drug abuse like change in division of labor, sense of purposeness, self-care, and family problem. He also suggested that NGO and government to take measures for preventions and rehabilitation. The second presenter, Ms. Rosie Valerwati Ralte, presented on the topic of domestic maids, working conditions and issues of sustainable future for domestic workers in Mizoram. She explored the conditions of domestic workers in Mizoram. The domain of domestic workers are mostly occupied by women from low economic background who are socially excluded. According to study, this condition is influenced by capitalism, where labor are for working class. Migrants in Mizoram are largely involved in this sector. She ended her presentation by suggesting that we should work towards creating a society where informal sectors like domestic work sectors is a space where the marginalized sector can find a stronghold and create job opportunity for them. The last presentation for the first day is given by Dr. Samuel L. Zwongo and Lrin Pui and it was presented by Dr. Samuel L. Zwongo on the Margaret Mead conundrum, locating the biological in debates in gender role reverse. He argues that gender role or gender role reverse is a political influence and socially construct. He pointed out that the liberal thoughts blurs the line between sexuality and blurs the rights, aid from academia and selective curricula in creating dominant discourse on the issue of gender roles meets early ideas as opposed to the later ones plays a huge role here. Day 2 of the seminar is divided into two sessions. The first one is panel session and the second session is valedictory session. Today in the first session, we heard from 4 presenters and it was chaired by Professor Benjamin L. Saituanga. The first presenter is Lomsang Puya on Sustainable Development Goals for Women with Disability, some issues faced in Aizawl. He addressed that disability has affected more women at 19% as compared to men with 12%. He studied the facilities used by women with disabilities and the struggles they face. In line with SDG, he highlighted the need to mainstream disability in all the efforts of development programs so as to achieve no poverty, good health and well-being, good education, and reducing inequalities of the Sustainable Development Goals. He indicated that most of the women with disabilities in Aizawl have very little to no access in various facilities which are required to bring forth changes and development. The second presenter is PL Zoming Sang on the topic of contextualizing gentrification as an impact of urbanization. She addressed the urbanization and gentrification as key phenomena which affect urban areas and their residents around the world. This has resulted in the emergence of globalized urban culture that homogenizes urban spaces and identities. She further emphasizes that due to the changes in the economy, shifts in demographics and government politics, gentrification has become a key aspect in the transformation of urban space from traditional working class neighborhoods into spaces which has been primarily populated by affluent individuals. She examined it in 4 parts: rising costs, decreased housing option, disruption of social network, and unequal access to resources. The third presenter is Lerwin Diki on overcrowding in Central Women's Jail, problem and prospects. She pointed that Mizoram is the second highest number of female inmates next to Assam. She highlighted that majority of the inmates are under trial and are incarcerated due to drug-related cases. The level of increase in the number of female inmates is alarming in juxtapositions with the stagnant number of staff and prison infrastructure. Overcrowding in prison is the major problem in terms of capacity, well-being, and administration. With ever-increasing number of inmates and questionable level of sustainability of the infrastructure, the well-being of the inmates and the legal procedure of their incarceration seem to suggest a certain level of failure in management and administration. The fourth presenter is Takolong Kichu on the interaction of norms and cultures in globalized world, a study of the impact of globalization on our women inheritance rights. He gave introduction on the tribal community. He also states that they are the first to accept Christianity among Naga tribes. Traditionally, the Ao Naga followed patriarchal system wherein only male descendants can inherit property or wealth. He highlighted the importance of globalization for opening up the world for Naga community. With the help of globalization, the society aware the gender inequality and questions the inheritance rights. He focused the study on regulations, practices, and the positions of women in the traditional inheritance system of the Ao Nagas. And the next session is the valedictory session, which is chaired by Dr. Samuel L. Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology. The chief guest for the valedictory program is Professor Lanundanga, Registrar, MZU, and the valedictory address would be delivered by Professor S.N. Chowdhury, Rajiv Gandhi Chair Professor, Barkatullah University. Certificate distribution to follow, and Professor R.K. Mohanty, Head of Department of Sociology, will deliver the vote of thanks. This is all for my present report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for providing us with a comprehensive yet insightful report on the seminar, proceedings, and discussions. It is an honor to have with us today our esteemed chief guest, Professor Lanundanga. Now, I'd like to kindly request him to address the seminar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Professor Mohanty, Head of Department of Sociology Department, and Professor S.N. Chowdhury, the invited speaker, and who will deliver this valedictory address, and the organizers from the department, and my colleague in the university, and all the invited speakers, the presenters, and dear students, friends. Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be with you here in the valedictory function of this very important seminar. But on the outset, I would like to express my apology that for being late. But there was a reason that's why I'm coming late. Our controller of examination is out of the country now. Then I'm taking a charge of the controller of examination these days. And the undergraduate examination is going on, and we have an issues in the examinations related matter where we need to attend very urgently, so for which, we called the concerned person, and we had a very important and a kind of an urgent meeting. So it is a little bit prolonged. So because of which I'm coming late. Anyway, thank you for your invitation once again. Yes, for the kind information from other organizations and institutions. So this year, as we all aware that in recognition of the presidency of this G20, we are taking some activities relating to the trust areas of this G20. So we have given all the departments to conduct a kind of a seminar, whether it may be a national or international. And I think that all the departments are conducting this kind of seminar, not only the academic departments, even the centers that we have had here in the university. And another good news, so the same kind of trend will be keep on going during this financial year. So the seminar, national or international, or a conference, or a kind of a workshop, may be organized in near future in in a larger capacity, may not be an individual department, may be at the level of the school. So that could reach that interdisciplinary kind of approach. So when we are doing departmentally, so we are focusing into our own expertise. So this is what we are planning here in the Mizoram University. So I would like to request all the students, the researchers, and even the faculty from colleges and even from the university, from other places as well. So if you could come again in the coming near future, so we'll be holding another kind of interdisciplinary approach kind of this seminar or conferences. Going into the very topic of this seminar, I do not have much knowledge about the very topic, but being from a background of as a botanist and switching over to there's a forestry department. So what we are working with, especially my research interest is started with the traditional knowledge system, which is very much related with what to say, like the indigeneity. And talking to a sustainable development, you must be very much aware with the term itself, like this sustainable development. So literally, when we defined, so you may beautifully give the definition of this sustainable development. But the important thing is that when we talk about sustainable development, what is the root of development, as a sociologist Kapoor may define? Because when we talk about this development, we may think mostly a technology base, a hi-fi kind of technology. But when we really look into the development, what is the originality of this development, which is what we have had here in the very topic, that is the indigeneity. Because the indigenous knowledge or the traditional knowledge is the root or the base of the development. Because I'm doing my research, it may be a very hi-fi kind of using this a sophisticated kind of instrument just to find out in my research, like trying to find out the chemical contents and identifying what chemicals are there in the medicinal plants available. But how we came to know that this particular species or plant is having that property? We get the knowledge and idea from the traditional knowledge system only. Integrating the indigenous knowledge with the scientific thought, so we will be able to attain the sustainable development goals that has been written down or we came across every day. So that is why the very topic that you have chosen is very much related, as you have already discussed, in conformity with that of the Sustainable Development Goals that has been laid down by the United Nations. There are 17, these SDGs are laid down by the UN. So when I look at the different these lectures that has been already taken, these are all interesting. Why I'm very much interested? Because you are confined to the local context, which I always mentioned in this kind of gathering is, we are talking about the research. So what would be the outcome of our research? Being a sociologist, I am not a sociologist, but my very much concern about and the trend of this higher education nowadays is, the research or the knowledge that we have had through research, that should link to solve the problem or the need of the society. So we are having a lot of seminars these days. So whenever I have an opportunity to have a kind of a speech, like this kind of speech, I always mention that whatever the findings that we have had, who will be benefiting and what is the application of that findings. So that is a kind of a challenge. So recently, a Vice Chancellor conference has been organized by Northeastern Council. So one of the important topics that they have mentioned is innovation. We always talk about innovation. What is innovation? Innovation is not a kind of, what to say, like a hi-fi kind of activities. Innovation is based only with the indigenous kind of a knowledge. How to make use of available resources in a better way. So that is what we are talking about, innovation. So that is why when we talk about indigeneity and sustainable development, very much appropriate. That has to be started from the indigenous knowledge to have a sustainable development. And that needs to be localized, I used to say. Because I always say that we may think in terms of a global level, international level. It is true that what is the trend at the global level. But to achieve our goals is we need to act at the local level. So that is why we cannot neglect or bypass the indigenous knowledge, the indigeneity, when we talk about sustainable development. So that is our challenge. And then, I do not know, just now, one of our friends has given the summary of this 2-day seminar. So this is my question, like, sir, so whether this seminar has reached to the goal of the topic that we have already set. And what are the recommendations that is coming out of this seminar is also important. And apart from that, what will be the application of the findings that we have had during these seminars? That is also another important question. But I hope that, so you have been deliberating and giving lectures in most of the, I think all the important topics. So that has come out with, I hope that, a very good kind of a recommendation that has to be implementable and that has to be pursued, because this is a sociology department. You are very much related with the society, directly relating with the society when you talk about other departments. So that is what I would like to mention. So to end my speech, I congratulate once again the organizers for organizing such a beautiful seminar successfully. And I congratulate all the presenters and the participants. And I wish that, so it will come out with a very fruitful kind of a recommendation. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Your words have shed light on the significance of this seminar. Now, it is my privilege to invite Professor S.N. Chowdhury, Rajiv Gandhi Chair Professor from Bakartula University, to deliver his valedictory address.
Respected chairperson of this session, my dear friend Professor Mohanty, all the students, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I apologize because I have some throat infection, because these days I am moving from pillar to post in the country in different capacity. So therefore I have to consume whatever is given here and there. So I have some problem, but I will try my best to do justice to the topic, if not to me. Now, the title of my presentation is Indigeneity and Sustainable Development During the Era of Globalization, Challenges and Possibilities. Sir, talked about possibilities. So briefly, I will highlight on possibilities. And these days, I'm working on the related topic where I'm trying to search where is the way out, because globalization is now available in each and every part of our life. Okay, you cannot go back to globalization. You have to accept globalization. And when I discussed globalization, there was a very senior professor in Jawaharlal Nehru University, a guru of Professor Mohanty, late Professor Jogen Singh. Now, he wrote a very small article on globalization, and he said that, and this statement is every now and then haunting me. He said that globalization has brought opportunities for few and anxieties for many in Indian context. Now, it is the responsibility of ours that how these few may be changed into majority and majority into minority, so that the benefits of globalization can reach to each and everybody's life. Now, with this, let me make a small note on the very title of this seminar. Then I will come to my point, and hope I have 45 to 1 hour to finish my lecture. So before coming to the main point which I have to cover, I would like to make a brief comment on the title. The title is very interesting, and to me, everybody can perceive title in their own way. But since I have worked on globalization, since I have written 2 books on indigenous knowledge system published by Ministry of Culture, Government of India, so therefore, I will briefly speak that I perceive that indigeneity and sustainable development are the 2 sides of the same coin. If there is no indigeneity, you cannot think of sustainable development. There are only 3 global attributes of sustainable development. Only 3, not 4. And these are stability, productivity, and equity. Only 3. And in the case of indigeneity or indigenous, whatever it is, indigenous, all the 3 are easily available because Sir has given the example of indigenous knowledge system or traditional knowledge system, whatever it is. Now, it is not a product of laboratory and library. It is a product, it is constructed by its user in the field situation. It is either constructed in day-to-day, on the basis of day-to-day felt experience or perceived experience. So everybody participates in the construction of indigenous knowledge. So therefore, and everybody is free to use it the way they like. Okay, this is the characteristics of indigenous knowledge. And over the time, if there is change in the ecological base, certain elements of indigenous knowledge can disappear. And those who are working on, or those who have worked on culture, they might be knowing that we have a concept of living culture and dead culture. So sometimes there is also death of culture, and in that case only some symbolically be used, some elements of culture on our different occasions we use. So in the absence of indigeneity, you cannot think of sustainable development. And in principle, you see, globalization can be perceived in 2 ways, or with the help of 2 concepts. I mean, globalization as a process, okay? And some scholars are of the opinion that globalization is to some extent aggressive, you see, new avatar of modernization and development. But there is much difference between the 2. Modernization seldom believes in breaking down of boundaries and barriers. But modernization also believes in what Anthony Giddens, Consequences of Modernity, the name of the book is Consequences of Modernity. He was a principal of Trinity College in London University. He delivered lecture here and there and published a book called Consequences of Modernity. Now, in that book, there is one chapter, Is Modernization a Western Project? And he said, do you agree or disagree? He said that modernization is a Western project. So, okay, and modernization, I will explain it subsequently as and when needed in my lecture, but right now I only wish to say that there is a strong statement. And there are many scholars in our country also who support this viewpoint, especially Viశ్వేశ్వరయ్య, who wrote in 1920, and he impacted the imagination of Pandit Nehru, so I will come subsequently on this particular issue. But Anthony Giddens said that the building of modernization will be constructed at the graveyard of tradition. If we accept this proposition, and we have accepted this at the global level. Earlier we had only one method, only one mechanism of development at the global level, not other. And that was modernization. And that is modernization. Some new experiment may be here and there at the micro level. You can talk of Sarvodaya, Gramdan, Bhudan, Naxalite movement, this movement, that movement. But these are the micro level activities. It has no, you see, global impact. But it is only modernization who has global impact, and modernization believes in this particular thesis that tradition has to go if modernization has to be accepted. Now, if this is the state of affair, or if this is the philosophy of modernization, then what will happen to societies like India, who is by and large traditional? By and large. Our entire tribal population, I'm not talking of a particular state and its demographic profile. I'm giving you national scenario. According to Kumar Suresh Singh's report, Anthropological Survey of India, more than 95% tribals live in villages. Whether they are tribe or scheduled tribe, that is another story. I will not go into the details of that. But suppose if a community, 8 or 9% population, if they are living in villages, this means their source of livelihood is definitely not secondary or tertiary. Their sources of livelihood is only primary. And they live 24 hours in informal environment. And if they are living in informal environment, they have to, and historically they have dependent on their culture, not on the estate, not on the market and other things. So I will commit shortly. Now, so far as globalization is concerned, in principle, both as a process and as an ideology, it is 100% opposed to, you see, indigeneity and sustainable development. They cannot go side by side. Nowhere in the world modernization and indigenization is going side by side. Nowhere. I have worked among Red Indians in British Columbia, Canada. When I completed my research work, and after 10 months, I was about to leave the place, and I was living in reserve with First Nation people. And everybody was personally known to me. And they respected me like anything. They loved me like anything. They said that, sir, we have organized a farewell party near a particular totem tree, and you will be there. And as per our tradition, we give something as a gift to the guest. So kindly, as per our tradition, kindly let us know which item you like most. Which item? To avoid repetition, they said like this. I requested several times that no, everything I have already gone. Government of India had asked me to write a paper on particular overcoming ecological crisis, the state of, you see, First Nation people in British Columbia. But now I have lot of information, and on this basis, I can easily write 2 books. And I wrote 2 books and it was published in India. Okay. Then what happened? I said that I will accept whatever item you are giving to me. But there is a condition. And the condition is that you have to abuse me in your mother tongue. You abuse me in your mother tongue and kindly explain the meaning of this abuse in English so that I can get it. Unfortunately speaking, not even a single person, about 30–40%, not even a single person was able to abuse me in their mother tongue. So this is the state of, this is the outcome of, you see, globalization or whatever modernization it is. So modernization and globalization subsequently eroded them from civilizational point of view. There are 2 components of civilization, that is religion and language. You have to compromise on this if you are dependent on globalization, because we were discussing, myself and Professor Mohanty was discussing. I mean, the 2 important concepts. Modernization believes in homogenization of culture. One nation, one thinking, one food habit, one this, one that. And Indian society is a diversified society. There is a saying in Hindi, in my area, Bihar, there is a saying that कोस कोस पर पानी बदले 3 कोस पर बानी. Every 8–9 kilometers, there is change in your dialect. Your tone is totally different. In each village, you can see so many deities and domestic gods and goddesses. So a lot of variety is there, and variety is our strength. It is the diversity which can protect us from the negative consequences of globalization. For example, globalization believes in popularization of McDonaldization. Okay, but suppose I am vegetarian. I have nothing to do with this. No need for me to go to the, you see, mug and jug and not to the McDonald or this thing or that. So it is our culture which is protecting us from that thing. And now we know that the changing by one of my friends is a professor of anthropology in Itanagar, Sarit Chaudhary, Department of Anthropology. He is working on changing patterns of food habit among tribes of India. Okay. Now we can see that how today's food habit has completely shifted from their traditional food habit system, who was ecologically sound, and now how it has shifted to, and those who are educated youth or university colleges, etc., they are shifting to the, you see, fast food. And the fast food, the doctors are of the opinion that if you constantly consume cold drink and fast food, you are going to become the victim of heart attack, no matter what is your age. So we can see we are, deviating from our cultural heritage. So globalization, if globalization is, because you see, nowhere in the world, and particularly in India, globalization is beyond your control. It is only the state or culture which can regulate globalization. Now, a state is, many studies are available. Now, a state is siding with the market forces, not with the common people. A state is with the market. No matter what, you see, ideological commitment they have, which party they are, but a state in common noun is with the market, not with the people. And so far as culture is concerned, whether it is, there are 2 types of culture. In sociology, there is no typology of culture. In anthropology, we have 2 types of culture. That is the material culture and the non-material culture. Now, our culture is becoming weak to protect us from the negative consequences of globalization, because a state is with them, dominant public opinion is with market forces, and media is very powerful these days. So media is with market, film industry is with market, So everybody is with market, and common people are left unattended. So if this is the situation, then you can think of, you see, the future of indigeneity, and also future of, you see, sustainable development. So sustainable development is a thrown ideology by the first world countries. You cannot, and they are not doing anything for sustainable development. Where is equity? During this corona period, number of crorepati in our country increased like anything. Crorepati increased. But think of those people who died because of they do not get, you see, oxygen. They do not. So hundreds of people have already died. So where were these crorepatis? There is a mushrooming of health organized institutions in every town. But go to a nursing home for a small ailment, treatment of a small ailment, and your pocket becomes empty. So where is the state? So this is the question which needs to be probed by all of us. Now, so far as my paper or my presentation is broadly divided because the title needs historical treatment, okay? It is not possible to cover each and every aspect within 1 hour or in one lecture. So therefore, I have to be telegraphic. I cannot go into the details of that. Otherwise, it requires at least 3-hour lectures. Okay? So my lecture is divided into 3 parts, broadly speaking. The first part covers in the status of indigeneity, particularly with reference to the tribal population and the population living in non-tribal rural areas. Okay, but mainly tribal population, up to 1947. This is a broad generalization. Because before 1947, everything was not homogeneous. Okay? And from 1947 till 1991, when state became everything for tribes or common people, state intervention. And the third is from 1991 onwards, when market became, you see, powerful. Now you see, right, I have collected data on articles published in Economic and Political Weekly from 2000. In my area, some states were reorganized or created during 2000. These are Chhattisgarh from Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand from Bihar, and Uttarakhand from Uttar Pradesh. By and large, the new states are numerically dominated by tribes, by and large. Okay. So how many articles were covered? Articles, not short note. Articles were published in Economic and Political Weekly from 2002, 2001 or 2. How many articles were published? 20 articles were published. And the title was not on culture and tradition, not on social organization and institution. It was on tribal unrest, Naxalite movement, development and displacement, you see trafficking of tribal girls and women, and even tribal suicide among tribals. So thank you. Suicide among tribals. So these topics were covered, and in the past, because the history of tribal studies in India is very, very, very old. Those who are interested, I recommend a journal, may not be available here, but in Calcutta, it is available, Asiatic Society of Bengal. So back issues, right from I think 1881 or something like that. Since then till today, volumes are available, hard copies available. On Google also it is available, but it is not so visible. So anybody who is interested on any subtopic of tribe, they can consult this particular, this. So till 1947, this doesn't mean that tribal human rights were not violated. There are n number of examples, friends, and Sanskritization was not there. But as and when culture contact, and therefore there are a section of scholars who are impractically, who were impractically in favor of isolation. There are some scholars, because as and when the tribals came in contact with others, definitely non-tribals, maybe Christian missionaries, maybe you see Hindu organizations, maybe somebody else, because if interaction is between two unequal partners, okay, so those who are at the lower level, at least from material culture point of view, they have to suffer. They have to suffer. Okay. So I will just explain a small story. And the story is before coming of the British Raj in tribal area, there was a Santhal king in present Jharkhand state, at that time Bihar. And he was a very influential person, having so many resources. Now he wanted that his status should enhance, and in the entire district, people come to him for salam. And he said that, I have everything, but people are not coming to me. Non-tribals are also not coming to me. Then somebody suggested him that you wear the sacred thread. You know sacred thread? You wear the sacred thread. You perform some rituals, Hindu rituals, and your social status will improve. Okay? So, as per the advice of the, you see, his courtiers, he invited some purohits, you know purohit, who help in puja, performance, worshippers. So some purohits were invited from present Gorakhpur area. Gorakhpur is a district in Uttar Pradesh. So some purohits were invited to perform such rituals to improve the status of what is called the king. Purohit came along with some servicing caste people. Okay? And ritual was performed, and so many dakshina was given to these purohits, and ultimately these purohits settled over there. And many servicing caste migrated from the plain area to the tribal areas. And number of consequences have happened because of such in-migration. I'm not going to explain all these. But one of the consequences was that the amount of tax which the local tribals used to give to the Santhal king, it increased substantially. Because new expenditure came. So, and tribals were unable to pay. And Raja asked them to pay. And the informal institutions like I'm forgetting the name, but mundas and monkeys and all that, they were asked to collect. So some force was also used, and in this way, the king became highly, Hinduized. And it has its demonstration effect. And many tribal influence were also, influenced by the king. So, in nutshell, I can say, because he has given me the slip, in nutshell, I can say that as and when tribal came in contact with others, whether it was Maratha regime, the Muslim regime, the Rajput regime, or even in Madhya Pradesh, I can say, when they came in contact with the British administration, so everywhere they have had to lose. They were not the gainers. But it was during this period their cultural heritage emerged and strengthened. Whether it is indigenous knowledge system, whether it is the rituals relating to the management of vital demographic events like birth, marriage, and death. Okay. Youth organization, sacred groves, customary law. So all these institutions, actually totem and taboo, all these things emerged during those days in a massive manner. They themselves constructed to regulate their life peacefully. Okay, informal, you see, regulatory mechanism, so everything was there. And when they came in contact with the others, for example, in 1920, there was an advocate. He has extensively written on tribes and is a well-known authority on tribes, that is S.C. Roy. So S.C. Roy wrote a book in 1920, and the book says that when land, you see, was coded, land ownership was coded, many tribals approached the court of law for land patta, for land right. But they were denied land right. They were cultivating the land since long, but they were denied the land right. Why? Because they were unable to understand the language of the court. They were unable to deal with advocates, judiciary, so forth and so on. So this is an example of conflict between, you see, formality and informality. So when they attempted to become formal, because they live in informal environment, when they attempted to become formal, they have had to compromise. They have had to lose so many things. Under this environment, actually, India became free. And once India, I'm escaping, I have given abstract of my paper to, this is 7-page abstract to the organizer. Those who are interested, they can see the subtitles which I have given. But what has happened? After, and majority of anthropologists, if not historian, if not, you see, deputy collector or bureaucracy, etc., and travelers, etc., before independence, they have documented the condition of tribals, but except anthropologists were only interested to study their culture, civilization, organization, social organization, etc., etc. Some historians, especially historians from the Calcutta University Department of History, they have done some serious work on the plight of the tribals by all segments of the society, how they were exploited. Now, we entered in India, was made free, and number of steps were taken. I'm not going to the details of that. I have extensively written on all these issues. So, I mean, during this period, many more studies have been conducted, and most of these studies are impact studies. Impact studies. How this particular, how Schedule 5, how Schedule 6, how PESA, how many others have impacted quality of life of the tribal, and because of these two developments have taken place among tribes, two developments. One, a small number of tribals have gained benefits of modernization and development, maybe because of a state, maybe because of other things. Only a small number of them have been benefited. Modernization and development under the leadership of the state. But these mobile people are dependent prone. Once the state intervention is withdrawn, see the consequences after 2-3 generations. This is the danger, okay? And the second thing is that those who have availed benefits of modernization and development, they have had consciously or unconsciously to compromise on their cultural heritage. They have left their culture. Many studies have been conducted. My PhD supervisor, Dr. Sachidanand, he conducted, Professor Mohanty knows him, he was a renounced person. He worked on changing mundas, and those mundas who were educated and interned in bureaucracy, they hated their cultural heritage like anything, but those who were illiterate and poor, they were following their own culture. So the feeling of insiders and outsiders, if I quote Professor T.K. Uman, the feeling of insiders and outsiders came into being in existence among the tribes. But they are a small number. But majority of the tribes are the loser. Majority of the tribes are, they could not associate with the state intervention and could not avail benefits. Okay. So this process continued up to 1991. In a state of making needful correction, globalization was introduced also among them. And as I said earlier, that globalization is a new avatar of modernization model of development. Globalization, of course, believes in breaking down of boundaries and barriers, but this is a false proposition. Globalization is always in favor of the affluent. Societies like America, Germany, China even, and within the country for urban in comparison to rural, and within the rural also affluent in comparison to those who are lagging, and 99% tribals are lagging behind. This is the state of affairs. And because the state is not with them, in Madhya Pradesh in 2000, Dalit Agenda International Conference was organized. And under this scheme, the Dalits and tribals were landless people were given free of cost 2.5 acres of land. Government of Madhya Pradesh asked me after 2 years to make a study on this particular topic. I studied the topic, I have published that book. I studied on topic and I found that land was given to you. You are landless, but 2.5 acres of land was given to you after giving some bribe to the local level bureaucracy. You got patta, you got paper, having no selling right for 10 years. But just in a Pathari area, just by giving 2.5 acres of land, psychologically you can feel that you are now landowner. So your morale can go up. But how it will affect the production? Because besides land, you need so many other things. And these things were not available to the poor tribals and the poor Dalits. So it was by and large a complete failure exercise. I strongly wrote article published by Tata Institute of Social Sciences and also a book on this particular topic. For wider dissemination, people at large should know about the consequences of such intervention. Now, coming to the globalization. Now, globalization, we are perhaps in the third phase of globalization. Okay, so globalization do not believe at all in inclusion. No, this is not a welfare project. Recently I interviewed a CEO. You might be knowing son of Professor Jogesh Atal. Yeah, he is a CEO in American company in Bangalore. I interviewed him. He said that no, we do not spend CSR money, corporate social responsibility money. We do not give to university, we not give it to, you see, NGO, etc., who are doing for health, education, environment, etc. Once in a year, suppose we have 500 acres, 500 crores under CSR. Our people goes and deposit this money to the Prime Minister's Relief Fund. We have nothing to do with this. So the agents of globalization, like multinational corporation, they are dealing with the question of poverty, which is, they are furthering the boundary of, poverty by killing the environmental base. Once the environment is established, once the industry is established, first it is the, you see, environment. All the 10 components of environment, beginning with deforestation, ending with water pollution or land degradation or whatever it is. Everything is negatively affected. So you cannot rehabilitate environment just by planting so many trees. You cannot. Yes, concluding, I am concluding. So in nutshell, I can say that today again there is a need to revisit cultural heritage of tribes. Okay, because it is only culture which can to some extent save them from the negative consequences of earlier modernization, today globalization and development. Otherwise, nobody, everything is against their interest. So culture only, because they are, even today they are mouthless population. I cannot recommend what Ambedkar said about them, about Dalits. I cannot say educate, unite and agitate. Because there are many studies which prove that education is not possible. Education means not degree giving, no. Because it, in a book called Mistaken Modernity, in a book called Mistaken Modernity, Dipankar Gupta of Jawaharlal Nehru University, a book is entitled Mistaken Modernity. He has admitted that one of the consequences of modernization is it has killed the spirit of collectivism and it has promoted individualism. Your problem is your problem, my problem is my problem. So the cases of suicide will increase. Cases of, you see, mad people will increase. Mentally disturbed people will increase. But collective voice against any atrocities will not increase. Because we are in altogether different frame. And again, quoting Jogen Singh, there are 4 dimensions of modernization: normative, structural, cognitive, and technological. And there is a mismatch between all these 4. Technology, you can be advanced. I may be a scientist, okay, but without scientific spirit. I may be a democrat person. I may not maintaining untouchability in my classroom, in my office, but the same person can be maintaining this thing, untouchability and etc., blind faith, etc., in his or her kitchen. So we are almost like a motifs of, the character of motifs emerged immediately after second industrial revolution in England. So we are almost like a Hippocrates. So, and lastly, within one sentence, I would like to quote a historian like you might be knowing, Ramchandra Guha. Okay? Ramchandra Guha has said that at the national level, there are 8 factors responsible for underdevelopment of tribes. And you cannot make attack on these. Not at all. It is not, no, it is not possible under the given condition. Briefly, I will read it. I will not go into the details of that. Just within 1 minute. 1, unfortunately, tribals, and we are in the phase of globalization, okay. So unfortunately, they are living in natural resource rich areas. And these areas are haven for multinational corporations. Okay, this is one. The second point is Dalits of the country are tribals of the country are failed to produce a fighter like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. There is no tribal leader of Ambedkar stature in the country. So no such type of a spokesperson. Number 3 is, geographically they are in a scattered area. Thinly populated population. So they are not an active and assertive vote you see vote bank for any political party. And the fourth is, except northeast states, from the plain areas where large number of tribals are found, their presence in national level bureaucracy is insignificant. So no spokesperson, bureaucrats from the central India. And their indigenous knowledge systems are talked about indigenous knowledge system. Indigenous knowledge system do not occupy, you see, a prestigious position in the mainstream knowledge system. Do not occupy. Once you say in this, indigenous knowledge, this means this is a backward, traditional, outdated, etc., etc. So these adjectives are assigned to them. And next is, except Santhali and Boro, no tribal language is still recognized. We have only 22 languages which is recognized by Government of India. So different languages, different types, different languages. So these languages are not recognized, so you cannot read, you cannot appear in examination with your language, so you have to suffer. And in central India, in large number of tribals are residing in the, you see, conflict-prone areas, Naxalite-prone areas. And lastly, the mainstream media, either electronic or print, the mainstream media have nothing to do with. One of the a spokesperson of, you see, tribal from Jharkhand, activist from tribal of Jharkhand, his father and mother was killed by police and he was termed as Naxalite. But to me, he was not Naxalite. He is activist, well-educated activist, Gladsang Dong Dung. He has written a book called Whose Country Is It Anyway? Question mark. Published by Adivani Prakashan, Calcutta. And he made a survey of all the news channels located in Ranchi. And after he identified 22 channels in Ranchi, tribal-dominated area. Not even a single channel was owned by tribal. Just concluding. And not, suppose 10 hours was devoted on different issues by this channel, hardly 1.5 minutes was on tribal issues. So this is the state of affair. So government can give, you see, package, but who will ensure the proper implementation of the program? Now, advice is not coming from below. So therefore, the only thing is that we should identify their cultural heritage. Let us have scientific validation of this, and there should be, and it should be popularized so that there may be an alternative to adjust or cope with the negative consequences of globalization and modernization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I believe your insights and expertise will leave an indelible mark on all of us present here today. Now, we shall proceed with the certificate distribution. To distribute the certificate, I would like to kindly request our chief guests, Professor Lel Nundanga and Professor S.N. Chowdhury. First, our chief guest, Professor Lel Nundanga, please kindly come forward to distribute the first half of the certificate. Distinguished presenters, please come forward as your name is called. Dr. N. William Singh. Dr. Lel Mangay Chakchuak. Dr. Lel Dinpui. Mr. Lelhun Kima. Dr. Jemima Marak. Mr. Lelmuan Sanga. Oh, no. Thank you, sir. You may take your seat. Now, I would like to kindly request Professor S.N. Chowdhury to come forward. Mistress Rosie Van Leruatiralte. Dr. Samuel L. Chuango. Miss H. Lerin Puyi. Mr. Lom Sang Puya. Miss P.L. Zhou Sangi. Miss Lerin Diki. Mr. Tokolong Kichu. HOD. Thank you, sir. Now, I'd like to kindly request Professor R.K. Mohanty, the head of the Department of Sociology, to conduct the CSST felicitation.
Sir, we conducted course-stipulated study tour this year from 6th January to 18th January, where our fourth semester students went to Odisha and they stayed in Kalinga Institute of Industrial Technology hostel, and they were very generous in hosting us from food, accommodation, AC buses for local transport, everything, because that is the institute for tribal students from KG to PG, and this education is given free of cost. Education, healthcare, sports, everything is given to them free of cost. Around 30,000 students, they are there, and they dine together. And they, as Professor Chaudhary was telling, that the tribes here and tribes there are quite different and diversities. They doubted me that if my students are really tribes from the type of structure, posture, gesture and color that they had. And I had to convince them they believed that I am trying to take undue advantage of their system. But I convinced them and they could agree. Then we asked our students to write their field experience report, study tour report, and all of them submitted, out of which we selected 4 best reports written by our students. First is 1, second is 1, and 2 are given third position jointly, and I want to take this opportunity to felicitate these champions.
So, sir, I shall call out the names.
And the first prize is 500 rupees from the department. Second prize is 300. And third prize is consolation prize is 200 each.
So, for the tie for the third position, Angela Lalming Moi Lal Rongboli. Another one in the third position, R. Lal Than Fluangi. The second place, we have Julie Lalming Moi. And for the first prize, we have H. Lalfiat Pui.
I kindly request our HOD to remain on the podium to deliver the vote of thanks.
Esteemed Chief Guest, our Registrar, Lal Dunga Sir, and our valedictory address speaker, Professor S.N. Chowdhury, faculties of the department, faculties from the colleges, esteemed delegates, and my dear students. Believe me that I didn't visualize earlier that this occasion would be so grand, so successful, to touch each one's heart with whatever support that we received from our sponsors. So I'll be careful in thanking each one of you, and if I leave anyone, that may be construed as unintentional, and I may be pardoned for that. The first one is obviously the authorities of Mizoram University, our Vice Chancellor, Honorable, respected Registrar, respected Finance Officer, and nonetheless, the ex-Vice Chancellor in charge, Professor Purat, for whom this second half of May in Mizoram University is full of activities, youthful activities, and has become very vibrant and with seminars, conferences, colloquia, workshop, FDPs, so on and so forth. So in this context, I would also thank specifically Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, for having blessed us by his presence as the chief guest on the inaugural function of this esteemed program. And I also would like to thank our registrar sir for having adorned the chair as the chief guest of this valedictory function today, in spite of urgencies, emergencies, and also the official responsibilities, both as the registrar and finance officer as well. And I would also take this opportunity to thank the authorities at our PR cell, Ms. Marina, for providing all possible support for giving video and photographic coverage to this particular program, for which, in many of the electronic news media of Mizoram, we were published yesterday, and the entire program was live screened in YouTube channel as well. About the instruction given by Honorable Registrar at the valedictory function, I would assure you, sir, we are going to publish the proceedings in which the last page of the proceedings shall be on recommendations, and this shall be done without fail. Number one, over. Number two is our sponsors, where you again, finance officer, and our registrar and ex Vice Chancellor in charge are to be profusely, heavily to be thanked for having recognized this department for the sponsorship, as well as accepting the title of this seminar. Actually, during this time, I was in ICSSR on some responsibility. Then money given by Mizoram University was considered to be not very enough. Therefore, I approached the authorities there, and they agreed. And they have supplemented their budget of 1.5 lakh to this department, to the convener. And therefore, I sincerely offer my thanks to the authorities of Mizoram University for the sponsorship, and also Indian Council of Social Science Research, Dr. Madhukar, for having listened to me and for having partly supported this program. Then comes our keynote speakers who made their presence very heavily. First, our keynote speaker was Professor Kiki from Tezpur University, and he delivered certain brilliant issues and several questions to deliberate upon, as well as to research on, as a result of which we are heavily thankful to Professor Kiki for having given us time. Then our valedictory address, Professor S.N. Chowdhury, I know you have heard, this is his second visit. We, we always halt him because once he is on the podium, he never stops. And why it is so? Because if it is tribal studies, probably tribal studies and S.N. Chaudhary are nearly synonymous now in Indian sociology with so heavy work. Sir, thank you. In spite of your busy schedule and several commitments and several invitations, you could skip two in order to come here, as I came to know. And thank you especially for your love in addition to such a brilliant lecture giving. Then I sincerely thank all the session chairs who have been very kind to us. Out of them, Sir Benjamin is here, Ratnamala, Professor Srinivas Pati, they have really helped us, supported us, and in fact have blessed our presenters with their, expert advice and diligence. Then my next bunch of thank you shall go to the paper presenters as well as delegates. We screened all the papers and accepted, and we have now people from far and near, north and south, east and west, and they could be present and presented their papers, adding value to this much abhorred seminar. Then I shall also take this opportunity to propose my sincere vote of thanks in favor of my colleagues, faculties of the department, Sir Lalswai Liana, Dr. B. Laljar Liana, and Dr. Samuel, and the guest faculties, PL and Sir Pamkima. In fact, Lalswai Liana presented the vote of thanks in the inaugural function, and Sir Lal Pamkima presented the detailed rapporteur's report, and brilliant indeed. And I would fail in my duty if I do not thank the convener of the program, especially Dr. Samuel, for taking heavy tension during last 2 weeks, with heads heavy, and and he comes with a problem and gets a quick solution from me, so that Samuel, your hard work has paid, and probably your heart must be full that your seminar is a very grand success. Now I would thank all the faculties from the constituent colleges, including our Pachunga University College, for having cared to come and participate in the program, so that the seminar could see their presence and could utilize it to its best possible advantage. Next is for whom really, the real stakeholders for whom this seminar has been success. They are so hardworking in all our seminars so far that whatever quanta of thank you you give them shall be too insufficient. These are my students. These are our volunteers. These are the people who performed beautiful, indigenous, local, cultural, Mizo dance. and with all preparations, and probably our Vice Chancellor became very happy to see this musical performance. Our anchors, who are managing the stage from the back, Angela and the team, and Catherine Black Belt, as the team organizer. So I'm finishing. And my sincerest thanks are to all the electronic media houses, print media houses of Mizoram, and the type of support provided for having given wide publicity to whatever function that we have done. And with this publicity, I think we can bill it well and exhaust the amount sanctioned in our favor, possibly. Then I don't know who to thank me. I thank myself.
Before we disperse for lunch, where of course, sir, please, we hope you join us for lunch. But before we do that, to commemorate this moment in frame, I would request everyone for 2 minutes of patience and let's take a group photo. I hope that's fine.